Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going all the way deep into one of the most explosive, messy, emotional, and legally complex battles in K-pop right now. Newjeans versus andADOR and HYBE. This isn't just a contract dispute, it goes deeper than that. It's about creative identity, power, trust, and whether idols have any real rights in a system stacked against them. Over the next couple of minutes, I'll try to dive roughly into every twist. How it all started, why it started, what exactly was said in court, how the public is reacting, the financial risks, and what could happen next. I'll aim to stay as neutral as possible, present what each side claims, what the courts have said, and what's still up in the air. So strap in. This is the full story. But before I get started, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. Part 1, How It All Began, The Spark of Conflict. The earliest sign of trouble came back in April 2024, when HYBE launched an internal audit on andADOR, specifically targeting its CEO at the time, Min Hee-jin, along with an unnamed executive working alongside her. The audit was reportedly investigating whether andADOR executives had been acting to wrest control from HYBE or leaking internal information to which HYBE was suspicious of. Almost immediately, Min publicly fired back. She accused HYBE of undermining Newjeans' success by copying their visuals, choreography, music styling, and more in a newer HYBE group called ultimatuma, which debuted shortly after Newjeans. She claimed HYBE and Lab refused to acknowledge wrongdoing and only offered excuses. At the time, many people believed that there were many similarities between the two groups. Two girl groups under HYBE, both with a more youthful and refreshing concept that seemed to focus on nostalgia. They both shared some similar styling on some stages, along with similar dances. However, none of these things were new nor created by Newjeans, as most of these stylings and dances had already been present within other groups. However, Min was adamant that HYBE was jealous of how successful Newjeans immediately became after their debut and wanted to try and outdo her. The Newjeans members' parents also pitched in, pointing out that some of their friends were mistaking ultimatuma for their daughters, and that was causing them to be put in very uncomfortable circumstances of having to correct people who also saw the initial similarity between the two groups. By July 2024, HYBE subsidiary Source Music, home of ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ곱, even filed a lawsuit against Min Hee-jin, accusing her of defamation and business interference over some statements she made about HYBE, andADOR, and the debuts, especially regarding Min's accusation that a brand deal that was meant to go to a Newjeans member was stolen by ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ곱. The brand in question was Louis Vuitton, which the youngest member of Newjeans became an ambassador mere months after debut in 2022. Late 2023, Louis Vuitton announced publicly that ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ곱 as a group have become ambassadors to the luxury brand. Min believed that this was HYBE's, was of trying to push aside Newjeans and its members by replacing them with ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ곱. Newjeans reached out to Louis Vuitton regarding ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ's arrangement with them, and the brand apologized and indicated that HYBE had proposed Source Music's ambassadorship, implying some potential interference. However, all brand deals are done through the company, so it could just be that too. In their words, Min Hee-jin accused Source Music of leveraging networks gained during the process of negotiating with Louis Vuitton for Hyein, and thereby facilitating the ambassadorship for ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ without andADOR's prior knowledge or permission. Source Music did not appreciate Min's demand to ask her for permission before arranging brand deals for groups under a completely different branch. Source Music argued that ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ's ambassadorship was not a theft or backdoor maneuver, but rather came through the brand's natural interest or friendly relationship after the group attended a fashion show, etc. They claimed there was no need for a back-channel arrangement. Source also pointed out that other groups and members such as BTS and member J-Hope had served as Louis Vuitton ambassadors before Newjeans had debuted, and yet andADOR never needed consent from their labels in those cases. They used that to suggest there was no obligation for andADOR to be consulted for Source Music's appointment. Source Music released a public statement denying that ᴄʀᴅɪᴛ gained any unfair privilege or copied Newjeans' deal. They said their relationship with Louis Vuitton began earlier, with Sakura's individual contract around April 2022, which was 8 months before Hyein got the deal, and 3 months before Newjeans had even debuted. Source Music also explained that the deal for the whole group was expanded legally through negotiations with the brand's Japanese office. They contended the ambassadorship extension to the full group was not a smokescreen or diversion, but a brand expansion decision. By late August 2024, the tension had boiled over. On August 27th, andADOR announced that Min Hee-jin would be stepping down as the CEO and that Kim Joo-young would assume the role. andADOR said Min would remain on the board and continue producing music for Newjeans. Min, on the other hand, said she was forced out unilaterally and illegally. Barely even a couple of days later, Min rejected a proposed temporary contract offered by andADOR that would have allowed her to continue working alongside Newjeans as a producer under restrictive conditions. She called the terms unreasonable and said they were designed to force her to decline. On September 13th, Min filed for an injunction to force an extraordinary general shareholders meeting to reinstate her as an internal director, citing a shareholders agreement guaranteeing her term. andADOR fully denied her claims. On October 29th, the Seoul court dismissed her injunction, saying her claims did not meet the legal requirements, ultimately denying her the right to an injunction. Meanwhile, andADOR adjusted Min's board role, extending her term as internal director, which would be a significant promotion from just a producer, but explicitly rejecting any demand she had to return as CEO. Thus, by November 2024, the creative architect behind Newjeans had lost executive control of andADOR, yet still claimed moral and contractual ownership. On the 20th of November, Min Hee-jin publicly announced her complete departure from andADOR and from Newjeans. From the group's perspective, this was a breaking point. The structure they signed with was altered significantly. Part 2. The livestream ultimatum and public demand for Min's return. In September 2024, amid escalating tension and no public resolution, Newjeans staged a bold move out of the blue. A YouTube livestream, which was later deleted, on a channel that did not belong to Newjeans. In the livestream, the members demanded that andADOR, reinstate Min Hee-jin as CEO, claiming that they no longer recognize the company under new leadership. In that stream, they shared stories about internal marginalization, complaining of being ignored, excluded, and unprotected. One anecdote. Hanni said that she had greeted ELIT members in a hallway of the company, and afterward heard a manager say to ignore her. She claimed she reported it to andADOR's CEO at the time, but no action was taken, leaving her feeling as though she was being ostracized within her own label. The atmosphere was raw and emotional. The message was clear. They felt betrayed, and they were publicly calling for change. The livestream hugely amplified the conflict, bringing it from internal backroom moves into broad awareness among fans, media, and industry watchers. This live public ultimatum effectively removed the possibility of a quiet resolution. It framed Newjeans not merely as artists under contract, but as people demanding to be heard and asking for a change for the betterment of their careers and all other idols. Or were they? Part 3. Hanni speaks to the National Assembly. In October 2024, Hanni took her grievances to the National Assembly's Environment and Labor Committee, delivering an emotional, widely covered testimony on the pressures of being a K-pop idol and alleged internal harassment. In her testimony, she said, "We are all human. I think a lot of people are forgetting that." She described feelings of invisibility, being left out of meetings, and not being able to speak up. She also reiterated the hallway incident, the sense she had of being deliberately ignored by people who should have protected her. She claimed that negative remarks about the group circulated via internal apps, and that the PR side of andADOR had asked the media to downplay their success following their Japanese debut. andADOR's CEO, Kim Joo-young, countered by saying the company had tried to investigate and gather CCTV evidence, but that proof was lacking. She said conflicting allegations made it hard to take definitive action. The company also pledged to cooperate with further oversight and encourage dialogue. She said that if she didn't speak up, issues like this would quietly be buried. She testified to not wanting trainees, juniors, or peers to go through the same things she and her fellow members were going through. During her testimony, Hanni became visibly emotional and cried. Reports said her voice shook when talking about the environment in the company, being ignored, having to endure these behaviors. But there were also criticisms. Some people criticized what they saw as inconsistent behavior, such as being very emotional during testimony, but then being seen laughing or making faces, or taking selfies with politicians. Critics said that post-testimony live streams or photos gave the impression of performative sorrow, rather than something entirely serious. One notable photo that circulated widely. After her testimony, one of the images showed Hanni taking a selfie with Jung In-seop, the CEO of Hanwha Ocean, who had been summoned to the same audit for separate issues regarding the deaths of several workers at a Hanwha Ocean facility and violations related to worker safety. The selfie with the Hanwha Ocean CEO amplified criticisms. People saw it as mixed messaging or poor optics given the seriousness of worker deaths and safety violations in that company. Some argued that any public interaction with someone under such scrutiny should be more carefully considered. That image generated a lot of backlash and controversy. Critics pointed out that taking a friendly photo selfie with someone under scrutiny for worker safety would appear tone-deaf given Hanni's speech about workplace mistreatment and the broader labor rights context. Some argued it undermined her message or made her look like she was aligning with someone facing criticism, especially considering the weight of the situation to which Hanni was attending. Many found it off-putting that she would be posing and taking selfies with old men when she was bawling her eyes with what people are calling crocodile tears a few seconds ago. ago? Part 4, the formal contract termination and andADOR's counter lawsuit. In November 2024, after months of tension, Newjeans issued a legal notice demanding that andADOR rectify grave contract breaches within 14 days, or the group would terminate their exclusive contracts. This came as another sudden shock following Min Hee-jin's departure from the label. For netizens who were keeping up with the whole situation, this was the longest 14 days ever, patiently waiting to see what andADOR would do, how they'd respond. It was like an intense game of chess that had only just begun, and now it was andADOR's turn to move. As the deadline passed without satisfactory response, on November 28, 2024, Newjeans held an emergency press conference. They publicly announced that they believed their contracts were terminated due to violations and irreparable breakdown in trust. They also hinted at rebranding plans. Their emergency press conference was held just before the deadline to which they had set for andADOR. andADOR immediately responded, issuing a statement. They claimed the press conference was premature, that the contract remained in full effect, and that allegations of breach were baseless. They urged the group to continue cooperation under the existing contract. When it was clear that Newjeans had no intention of listening to anything andADOR had to say, they filed a lawsuit for confirmation of contract validity and sought injunctive relief, requesting that Newjeans be barred from engaging in independent entertainment or commercial activities. Pretty much what it means is that they want to hold two lawsuits. One to ensure that Newjeans continues to work under andADOR whilst the second trial is ongoing. That second trial will be for the court to decide whether the contract has actually been broken like Newjeans claims it has. Not Newjeans, not andADOR, not HYBE, but the law. By December 2024, Newjeans responded sharply. In a public statement, they said, "Forcing us to work for another 5 years despite this breakdown of trust is not only unreasonable, but also inhumane." They accused andADOR and HYBE of failing to protect them, defaming them, secretly surveilling them, and allowing media leaks to devalue their image. They also claimed the contracts include clauses allowing termination if andADOR fails to fulfill core obligations. They said they had already returned profits exceeding andADOR's initial investment. andADOR, in turn, invoked its financial investment, claiming it had invested over 21 billion KRW in Newjeans, funding promotions, training, facilities, marketing, and global expansion. They argued the group's success was made possible by HYBE's backing, and that Newjeans had benefited from associations with BTS and other major acts. Newjeans was the only group under HYBE that debuted with their own company, referring to them as BTS's little sisters, to which HYBE believed played a significant role in the success of Newjeans. It was at this point that the significantly large support Newjeans had was starting to waver. From the start of this whole shenanigans to now, the vast majority of support was clearly for Newjeans, as they are 5 young girls in a harsh industry standing up against a huge corporate business that appears to be taking advantage of the vulnerable position the girls have been put in. However, this would only be part of the story. Part 5, the creation of NJZ. During the period before the lawsuit was going to begin, Newjeans opened a new Instagram account by the name Jeans for Free, where they posted mostly cryptic messages about their situation and their upcoming plans for a re-debut. They even asked for new name ideas as they all wanted to close the previous Newjeans chapter and start fresh. This was when they started NJZ, their re-debut name, to which they announced that they were already working on new music. This was followed by the release of teaser images that displayed a complete change in concept. They scrapped the whole Y2K image and went for a more sci-fi pop style with bold colors and metallic details. This created a whole debate as to whether they were copying aespa, but that's a separate situation. They announced that their title track would be called Pit Stop, which would debut at ComplexCon in Hong Kong. This shocked fans who could have believed how quickly the girls were able to move on from their company and start fresh immediately off the bat. But to be able to re-debut, they first had to win the injunction. Part 6. The first injunction hearing in court's initial decision. On March 7, 2025, the first hearing was held regarding the injunction andADOR had requested to stop Newjeans from branching out independently. All 5 members attended, though attendance was not mandatory. Newjeans' legal team reiterated their primary argument: the breakdown in trust with andADOR and HYBE, the removal of ex-CEO Min Hee-jin, alleged discriminatory treatment, and what they claimed was an attempt by HYBE to discard them in favor of other groups. They said that their contract was with the andADOR Min they signed up for, not the restructured entity being forced upon them. Now here's the thing. If it truly stated in the girls' contract that they were to be working under Min Hee-jin, and Min Hee-jin is no longer part of the company, in theory that gives them full grounds to terminate their contract, as it would be a covered clause. This was something that many netizens pointed out to be a flaw in their argument, because it was in fact not at all a part of their contract. If it truly was, then that would have been the first thing the members would have pulled out. This would mark phase 2 of the wavering support Newjeans was receiving. They also raised earlier grievances, that in 2021, during trainee selection, they believed they were promised priority priority debut, only to see ᴄᴇᴅɪᴛꜱ emerge under HYBE's umbrella ahead of them. They argued this showed unequal treatment and broken promises. andADOR's legal team countered that though Min was pivotal, there is no clause guaranteeing her role. They said Newjeans' logic, that without Min, there is no Newjeans, was legally unreasonable. They also emphasized their massive financial support and the benefits the group received. They also argued that Newjeans was in fact going to debut first. However, Min kept delaying their debut, resulting in multiple other fourth-gen girl groups to debut. Especially considering that most of the ex-iZone members had already debuted, HYBE didn't want to delay their competition. And considering that Min was already delaying Newjeans' debut, and that ᴄᴇᴅɪᴛꜱ had 2 ex-iZone members along with Yoonjin, who was on the survival show, they thought that they had no choice but to debut ᴄᴇᴅɪᴛꜱ earlier than planned. On March 21, 2025, the Seoul Central District Court granted andADOR's request for an injunction. The court ruled that Newjeans were banned from performing, releasing songs, doing endorsements, or using the name NJZ without andADOR's consent. The judge said the plaintiff's claims, Newjeans, were not sufficiently proven and that andADOR had maintained many of its contractual obligations. This meant that NJZ legally did not exist and that it seemed the girls were going to have to cancel their ComplexCon debut. However, andADOR decided that the girls were going to be given permission to continue their ComplexCon performance so as to not disappoint fans, given that they had to perform as Newjeans and not NJZ. In that same ruling, but at a later date, the court noted that violating the injunction could carry a penalty of 1 billion KRW per violation per member. This was a result of HYBE and andADOR expressing that they were struggling to contact the members and that the girls had violated the court's verdict on multiple occasions. I go into more detail about this specific situation in another video that I'll link in the top right corner. On the very same day, Newjeans filed a legal objection, and their parents issued a statement saying the court had not adequately considered the depth of trust breakdown. They said the urgency restricted full presentation of facts. Part 7, the hiatus, rebrand, and reaction to the injunction. At ComplexCon Hong Kong on March 23, 2025, Newjeans debuted a new track titled Pit Stop under the new group name NJZ. After the performance, they addressed fans and, with heavy hearts, announced a temporary hiatus in response to the court ruling. They said, "This might be our last performance for a little while. We have decided to stop all activities for the time being in accordance with the court ruling. We believe we will come back stronger." Minji added, "We want to protect ourselves, and we don't regret our decision." andADOR later issued a statement indicating that they were not previously aware of the girls' self-proclaimed hiatus and are disappointed at the lack of proper communication towards the label. In interviews with media like BBC, the group described the shock of the ruling, saying they had never expected to lose the lawsuit. This was due to the fact that Min had in fact been discussing with potential Japanese investors, where her personal lawyers stated that there was no way in which Newjeans could lose the injunction. It seems that she and her lawyers were trying very hard to persuade these investors. I also go deeper into this in a separate video that I'll link in the top right corner. andADOR issued a statement expressing regret about the group's decision to perform under a different name and reaffirmed the contract's validity and their desire to continue working together. By April 4, 2025, the first trial for the contract validity lawsuit began. The judge publicly remarked this was a special case due to its complexity and public attention, given that no matter the outcome, it would set a significant precedent for the rest of the K-pop industry. I'll explain the outcomes and how they will impact the industry at the end of the video. In court, Newjeans again argued that Min's removal was retaliatory and orchestrated by HYBE-aligned board members. They claimed that andADOR now was a different entity than the one they agreed to, with changed values. andADOR countered that while Min's vision mattered, she was not contractually guaranteed as producer, that Newjeans had benefited immensely from HYBE's infrastructure, and that their termination reasons were inconsistent and lacking specificity. In July 2025, during another hearing, andADOR introduced Kakao Talk logs alleged to show Min advising parents, coaching grievances, orchestrating media strategies, etc. This was a key escalation. Newjeans' lawyers objected to the use or interpretation of those logs. By that hearing, Newjeans had been ordered by the court to resubmit and refine their list of reasons for termination, essentially demanding they convert broad grievances into legally precise claims with supporting evidence. Part 8. Public reaction, reputation, and impact on brands and fans. From early on, fans were overwhelmingly sympathetic to Newjeans. When the livestream aired, and especially when Hanni testified to the National Assembly, social media blew up. Supportive trending hashtags, petitions, commentary from other artists, the group was seen as underdogs fighting a monolithic system. As the legal battle dragged on and evidence from andADOR surfaced, text logs, counterclaims, financial disclosures, public discourse became more fractured. Some began questioning whether Newjeans had oversimplified or exaggerated claims. Others accused Hybe, andADOR of orchestrating PR campaigns to discredit the group. Brands, too, began to pull back. Contracts and sponsorship renewals were paused due to legal ambiguity. Advertisers don't want to associate with a group tied up in legal injunctions or accusations of defamation. Media outlets weighed in, some condemning the power imbalance in K-pop contracts, some criticizing Newjeans for airing grievances publicly. Analysts pointed out that if idols regularly left their labels, the entire investment-heavy business model might destabilize. For Hybe and andADOR, the reputational cost is steep. Even if they prevail legally, the public may see them as rigid, controlling, or exploitative, damaging goodwill with fans and artists alike. Part 9. Legal weaknesses, strengths, and key turning points. Now, to allow you to make your own decision on where you stand as a netizen, here are some strengths and weaknesses for both parties that I believe you should consider when making your own decision. Strengths for Newjeans. Their narrative is emotional and public. They position themselves as vulnerable artists defending against a large and wealthy agency. Their claims have moral weight, trust, identity, treatment, things that resonate publicly. Some contract language, publicly claimed, gives them rights to terminate if obligations are systematically breached. They've consistently framed the conflict as larger than themselves, about industry reform, artist dignity, power balance. Their win could change the industry by making it easier for idols to step out and voice mistreatment faced by their company. Weaknesses for Newjeans. Legal standards in Korea require material breach and precise, provable evidence. Feelings alone or leadership changes often aren't enough. The lack of explicit clause guaranteeing Min's role means the court may view her removal as outside the contract's legal domain. Their termination reasons have been shifting or broad, which courts criticize as vague. Fines for violation are severe, discouraging risky moves. All of their reasons for termination thus far have been denied as solid by the court. The strengths for andADOR. Hybe. Strong procedural position. Courts have already upheld injunctions, limiting Newjeans' freedom. Financial justification. They can show major investments, infrastructure, promotion costs, global expansion, legal predictability. They're defending a system where exclusive contracts are industry standard. Counter evidence, text logs, arbitration, financial disclosures to challenge emotional claims. Weaknesses for andADOR. Hybe. Reputation is fragile. Public sympathy may erode, especially if court rulings are seen as unjust. Creative identity. Newjeans' brand was closely tied to Min. Removing her undermines the argument of continuity, and by removing her, they stripped Newjeans of their powerhouse. The morality argument. If fans and the public see the label as cruel or dismissive, it matters in perception and may influence future regulation. Part 10. What could happen and what it would mean. Let's run through some possible futures and their implications. If Newjeans wins the main contract lawsuit, they'd legally exit their andADOR contracts and rebrand, NJZ or otherwise. They could pursue endorsements, performances, and new music independently. It would set a precedent for idols to claim termination after leadership changes or systemic breach. Agencies might respond by tightening contracts, adding arbitration clauses, reducing risk, and making it significantly harder for artists to terminate their contracts. The notion of a creative guarantee of a director or producer might gain traction in contract drafting. This just means that artists could terminate their contract based on whether they like or dislike who is in their creative team. If andADOR, Hybe wins, and the contract is upheld, Newjeans stays bound. Any independent moves risk huge financial penalty. The injunction continues to control their brand, name, performances. It sends a message. Artists, even extremely popular ones, have limited leverage. Aspirants may be discouraged from challenging unfair treatment unless extremely well documented. Agencies' dominance is reaffirmed. If a mixed compromise emerges, the court could uphold most of the contract but require andADOR to make changes. Better transparency, oversight, creative input, protection clauses. Newjeans might regain limited autonomy while remaining under the label. Partial precedent. Artists can argue for contract modifications under extreme conditions. Beyond the legal result, the ripple effects matter. For future idols and agencies, contracts may evolve. More protective clauses, clearer definitions of trust, severance rights, or contractual guarantees. For public regulation, this case could influence future laws or precedents around artist status, labor rights in entertainment, and oversight of label practices. For Hybe, andADOR's brand, even if they win, damage is done. They may become seen as difficult, controlling, or unsympathetic to artists. For Newjeans, win or lose, they face a challenge of regaining momentum, public image, brand identity, creative control. If they lose name rights, rebranding may be inevitable. Closing, reflection, and engagement. This is a landmark case in K-pop history, not just for Newjeans, but potentially for how agencies and idols negotiate power going forward. The court doesn't just decide contracts. It decides whether trust, identity, and personal dignity can anchor legal obligations. We don't know the final verdict yet, and it's possible the case will be appealed further after October 2025. But what matters now is how we interpret the stakes. Do we champion creative freedom and artist rights, or enforce contractual stability and law for investment certainty? I want to hear what you think. Do you believe Newjeans should have the ability to exit when structural changes happen? How much power should labels have over a group's creative identity and name? What kind of contract protections would you want if you were an idol? If you found this deep dive helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future updates on the verdict and any domino effects in the K-pop world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.